Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're digesting. We have a very exciting panel today. These guys have been dubbed crazy, have been dubbed ADD, multitasking, you name it. It's a very tough business to be an entrepreneur. It has a lot of ups and downs, but these guys keep on doing it for whatever reason. Today we're going to have them confess. So this is the time where we get them to tell us all about it, give us some insights of why they're doing it and why they keep on doing it again. I have a very exciting panel today with Jeff Hoffman. We heard Jeff speak this morning. He's the serial entrepreneur, founder of Priceline.com. We have Mohammed, Saeed, who is very well known for Freej. Who here in the audience have seen Freej on TV? Almost everyone. So Mohammed is with us here today. We also have Rabea Ataya from Bait. Who here tried to apply for a job online using Bait? Who found a job online using Bait? Okay. We have Roy Zakka. I first met Roy in a conference, passing by. And I just had a few minutes with him, and as soon as I talked to him, I knew that this is a serial entrepreneur. It took us maybe half an hour as Wamda to decide to invest in Roy, and so far has been one of our smartest moves. So Roy is the CEO of Ubanquity. Let's start with Jeff. So Jeff, before coming here, I spent some time on YouTube looking for your videos. And I've come across one of your very interesting concepts of coming up with ideas. Tell us more about that. How do entrepreneurs come up with ideas? How do they know they're great ideas and go after them?
Okay, so to keep it short, I'll address the first part of that. One of I made up the term for lack of a better word, but it's a term that I call info sponging. But somebody asked me one day, we've had more than one company that was successful, and they said, how do you keep coming up with additional ideas? And I thought about it, and the truth is there is something that we do intentionally, and I'll just tell you really quickly what that is. When we go to work every day, if you're in the healthcare business, you tend to do healthcare work all day. If you read a trade magazine, it's a healthcare magazine. If you go to a conference, it's a healthcare conference. What happens is you don't have idea flow coming in from the rest of the world because you're in your bubble, in your thing. So I do something that every single morning for the first 20 minutes of the day, I pretend I'm not in this industry. I pretend I don't work for my company, and I spend 20 minutes just wandering on the internet and looking at stories in other industries. What is the banking industry doing? What customer service solutions they have? What new technologies have come out? What new consumer trends on there? Every day, twice a day, I look at the top of Yahoo to see what the 10 most popular searches in the world are right now. What do I learn from that? I don't know on any one day. But if you do that every day, you start to get really in touch with the world, with the idea flow, with the information flow. And in the end, what happens is you connect the dots. Something that you learn today that you would never have looked at because it's not in healthcare connects to something you learned 3 weeks ago, and then you remember this thing from a month ago, and one by one, you can put together all those pieces, so new ideas come out of looking at a world that's a lot bigger than the one you live in.
So how did you come up with Priceline idea coming from in that context?
So, I mean, that's a perfect example, because I'll tell you what the pieces were. Literally, it's like puzzle pieces. One day I was reading a story about distressed inventory. And it was talking about how inventory systems are different when you're selling distressed inventory. In fact, it was a story about selling fruit and produce. And I remember thinking, well, if I have a banana, I have 4 days to sell it, or something. If you have an airplane seat, the goods are spoiled as soon as you close the door. Then another day I was reading a story about it was a news story, and it was about the fact that every night 600, in the US alone, 600,000 empty airplane seats a day fly around the country, right? Then I read a story about yield management systems in a totally different industry, and what a yield management system is that changes prices in real time and confuses consumers. Then I read a thing about, online trends. The point is, we literally were writing down all these interesting things. I always do that. When I learn something interesting, I make a one-line note. that here's what it takes to sell perishable commodities in the world. Here's 600,000 empty airline seats a day. So what we do is we lay all these notes on the table, all these data points, and we try to assemble, move all the puzzle pieces around and make something. We literally did that with Priceline. We literally were moving around points of information about what's going on in the world, and one day we said, wait a minute, if you move all this around like this, you could build a reverse auction, consumer-driven buying system that sells excess inventory that retail can't sell. We would have never come up with the idea if we weren't looking at things that were not part of my day job.
You say we. So did you form a team before you actually jumped on Priceline.com idea? And how, in your series of startups, series of ideas, do you tend to gravitate around the same people and build startups with them?
I will say this. I think that the team is everything, right? We try to always say we in our business because there's no company, there's nothing that I've ever done or anyone else I've ever met that I could have done by myself. The reason I think that we won more than one time was because we always had the best team. And in fact, I'll tell you a really fast little story. Somebody asked me, what is a leader's job? And I said, a leader's job is to go hire people smarter than you and then go pick up their laundry. And I will tell you why I say that. I had hired some really smart people. They were in the room building the best product, award-winning products. And I went in one day, and the newest employee was 20 years old. But he was a really good designer, web engineer. And I said, you guys need anything? He did not know that I was the CEO or the owner of the company. And he said, yes, could you pick up my laundry? And everybody stopped thinking we shouldn't say that to the owner of the company. And I said, where is the ticket? And he said, it's on my desk. And I said, I'll be back in 20 minutes. And my team said, you're the CEO of the company. He's a 20-year-old new employee. Why would you pick up his laundry? And I said, whatever I can do to make his life easier while he creates the best products in the world, I will go do. So thank you. We always focused on building a team and letting them do their job.
Roy, where do your ideas come from?
As Jeff says, I basically do the same thing. I do a lot of reading. I have a lot of feeds that I subscribe to. So pretty much at night, anytime I have downtime. Okay. I don't watch any TV. I don't listen to the radio. I don't read newspapers. I live in the Middle East. It's depressing. So what I tend to do is just purely technical information, and then it usually soaks in the morning for me in the shower.
So take us back to your first business ever, way back. Like I'm thinking childhood time. Like tell us, when did it first start? When did you first catch the bug of building company after company?
My first entrepreneurial job was as a 12-year-old in Switzerland. I was spending a summer at my aunt's, and there was a small castle next to us, and I managed to learn from the locals all about its history, events, etc. And then one day I was playing there, and some tourists came, and could you show us around? Sure enough, I took them around, and I showed them the castle, etc. When they were done, they gave me 20 Swiss francs. That's a lot of money for a 12-year-old. And sure enough, right after them, there was another batch of tourists. Before I knew it, I was the most popular kid in this little village in Switzerland.
So you found a problem, you could solve it, you empowered yourself, and you just went after that. And now, fast forward, you have done a number of startups in between. You're married with 5 kids. How do you do that? I'm not married, I don't have kids. And it's still hard for me to do company after company. How do you do that?
That's 5 more startups he built.
With 18 years exits.
Yeah. My kids love entrepreneurship so much, they're all going into medical school. Actually, it's my wife is probably my biggest help. She's helped me build the family. having 5 kids is a big challenge. Her second pregnancy were triplets. So we moved from 1 kid to 4 kids in 2 goes. And to translate this is 28 diapers a day, just in case you guys want to keep track. But when we first started this, my wife used to put a picture of me and that would say, "This is Dad," because Dad was never around. Dad was always on planes and moving around. So after I sold my first company, I took a year off and I stayed with our 5th child. Spent a lot of time with her trying to make up for all the lost time. But it can be done. You can raise a family and you can be an entrepreneur. It's not a crazy thing.
So it seems in your case, you had your wife as a strong support system. I mean, does it get easier? I mean, the first startup I built, I still remember one day I would wake up feeling the king of the world. The next day I would say, what the hell am I doing? And it still is like this. I mean, did it get easier for you? And is your support system something that you needed for you to get through those cycles again and again?
It doesn't get any easier. You learn from your mistakes. I've done a few good things. I've done a lot of bad startups. When I first started this, I used to be the youngest person in the room. Now I'm probably the oldest person in the room in any venture that I'm involved in. But you definitely learn from your mistakes. You have to move on. You have to accept that you will fail at some point in time, but you got to pick up the pieces. And you just got to learn from where you screwed up the first time and just move on.
Mohammed, Freej first series was a success. Second one was not so much. Third one you picked up, you went back on track, and you picked the success. So at any point in time in your career, did you think it was too hard or too negative that you wanted to stop and give up?
Just a correction. The first one was it was the #1 show. The second one was the #1 show. Third one, the people were not very happy with it because actually we did not spend much time making it because we were focused on designing a theme park back then. But it managed to get 4th place, and the 4th season, which launched last year, came in second place. So all in all, out of 200 shows that you see in Arabia, being #1 or 2 or 4 is not a big deal. And to be honest with you, we really don't care anymore about such numbers, and because the brand has evolved to a stage. But coming back to the challenges or feeling that you do feel depressed. Yes, I will lie if I say, you know what, I really don't care if people think I'm not doing a good show. We are artists in the end of the day. We create every single second of what you see with passion. We discuss it. We make sure the lighting is beautiful, the colors are beautiful, the word that they say. So we are very, very picky in that sense. So we do feel depressed that, sometimes it kind of flew over people's head. The jokes were not working. But all in all, you have to look at what we do as one package. It's 15 episodes. You have to value them as, when you see a flower bouquet, it's the flower bouquet. That means you don't go picking each flower and say, you know what, there is a worm on this one or there is a thorn on this one. You look at the flower bouquet itself and you judge it as such.
And so you were more of a parallel entrepreneur than a serial entrepreneur as well, because you were doing things at the same time.
Okay. That's what they call it, huh?
Maybe.
Okay.
But you built Freej, then you built a theme park in between, and you've done other things as well. So when did you decide to focus on one thing? How did you decide what to focus on?
No, the focus was on 2 things. The focus was on Freej as a brand. And of course, there are so many buckets underneath any entertainment brand. So the TV show was the main driver, but then you have the theatrical show in 2009. We have another spin-off TV game show, and then we have the rotating theatrical shows in the mall. So the brand has legs to evolve into different buckets, such like any brand that is related to Disney or DreamWorks, or all of those. So preparing that brand was an important thing. Another product was Mohammed Saeed Harib himself. So Mohammed Saeed Harib was a brand. I made sure that I was a name associated with Freej, because in the Middle East there are many directors who you remember the show, you remember the product, but you have no idea what the who the director was. And that's very bad, because commercially it's the director's kind of brand image that will take you to the next projects and will make people believe in you as a brand. And that's why I think Freej lasted so long, is because I became a brand with the product itself.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So you're saying that as an entrepreneur, as you're building your first startup, your second startup project, you need to build assets.
Yes.
And you leverage on those assets as you move on. Any tips here? And I mean, in your case, it was your personal brand. How were you able to do that? And did it make it easier for you moving forward?
Well, it does, but it all connects to your kind of social life again, and because you become the brand ambassador of your products, then you become, you come under scrutiny, and your life becomes that kind of thing that people follow, and whatever you do reflects back on your brand. So it's a very kind of dangerous line to walk. But I've seen it done, like Apple and Steve Jobs. You have, DreamWorks and Jeffrey Katzenberg. You have all of these names that are related to a brand. Of course, I have an amazing team that works with me, but I'm in the face of that canon. So if the show becomes a good show, I'm a superhero, and if it fails, I'm the bad guy. So I have to live with that.
What about your friends, the people you hang out with?
Yes, they all work in Freej now.
So you hired them all.
I've hired them all, so I can fire them. That's the deal.
So you have leverage over them.
Yes.
But are they your support system? Who do you go to? Where do you get your muse? Who do you go to when you feel bad, or who do you go to when you feel good, and share with them?
Like anybody, I have my support group, I have my family, I have my friends, I have people I can take advice from a business point of view. Sometimes you really need to. Sometimes I have to say this: we are so surrounded by smart guys, and it's the stupid guy who has the best answer. So sometimes you don't really need to because people tend to be very philosophical and kind of find solutions and cut the pie in certain ways. And you go to the simpler people, and that's where you find your brilliant answers.
Well, it's actually very hard to simplify things, so they might be even smarter than us.
Yes.
Or you. Rabea, you built InfoFort, then you moved to Bait. Different businesses, different business models. How did that happen?
I think it goes back to the question you asked Jeff, which is how do you come up with ideas to begin with? And in my personal experience, most ideas come out of a personal need that you're trying to satisfy. And in thinking of solutions, you speak to a lot of people and figure out whether or not a similar solution applies to them. So in the case of InfoFort, we had a small business that was fast growing, was exciting, and we couldn't attract talent to it. It was really difficult to find qualified people to hire into the business. Meanwhile, as I traveled through the region, there were unbelievably talented young people who weren't able to find jobs. And I realized part of the problem was information and people couldn't flow very easily at the time. And the internet was just coming online. And so that was a eureka moment. Could we use the internet to better bridge the gaps between opportunity and talent? That process still goes on. So in the last year, we've helped support and launch a bunch of businesses. One of them was a doctor review, an appointment booking site called Doctorana. It stems from the fact that I've got aging family as well as young kids, and in both cases it tends, you need to end up visiting doctors all the time, and you keep on thinking, where do I find the right doctor? And that's a challenge that I have personally that I set out to try and solve. We launched Mom's World, which is also focused on moms and kids, and because again, you spend half your time as a parent buying gifts for birthdays and various other things, and if you could do that from the convenience of your home, it would be wonderful. So to a large degree, it's about satisfying personal need and then seeing if others have a similar need.
But you say we launched Mom's World, we've launched Dr. Una, like if it's a snap. I mean, tell us, what does it take for you to launch those things, and what over the years have you done to make it easier?
The honest answer is it takes a lot of naivete to launch these type of things. I think whenever I think about any entrepreneurial journey that I've been a part of, entering it, I generally think of it as being much simpler than it actually is. And it's always that when I'm in it, I'm like, wow, had I known all this information back then, I would have probably never started this. But the honest truth is, once you're in it and you're really enjoying it, irrespective of the difficulty, you somehow find a way to make it work. So it's a bit of courage, a lot of naivete, and some hard work. And I guess that equation tends to work.
And does it get easier over time?
I think the actual process does not get easier, but my ability at least to look at problems a bit more disconnected and not have to worry about them as much. So it used to be that if the smallest issue happened, it's similar to having babies. Your first child you obsess about, and if anything goes wrong, you spend nights thinking about it. By the third baby, you're like, oh, it's okay. If she falls over, she walks, whatever happens, it's, you know, hopefully, inshallah, it will be okay and she'll survive to see the next day. And I think that's fundamentally important in business. It's not that the problems get any smaller, but your ability as an entrepreneur to handle them changes.
How do you find it now that you've grown a few companies, how do you find it easier for you to attract the right people? Because again, we've heard from everyone on the panel, team and people are the most important asset. How easy was it to hire all those people for the companies that you've mentioned and to attract founder-style material to those companies?
So I think you hire people based on two primary things. One is their experience and skill set, and the other is cultural fit, and the cultural fit is about how much you actually get along with people. To me, entrepreneurship is a lot about self-actualization. It's about bringing pleasure and joy to one's life. And I think the most fundamentally important part of hiring a team is finding people you truly enjoy working with. And that's challenging. It's finding a big enough team that you continually enjoy coming to the office and seeing, and who challenge you on a day-by-day basis and actually help you grow is not easy. And that remains the most challenging part of what I do, in spite of the fact that I run a massive job site. Finding great talent where there's a good chemistry continues to be quite tough.
You're one of the healthiest entrepreneurs I know in the region, that you obsess about exercising. Is that something that keeps you balanced?
Yeah, so I think, again, I go back to why am I an entrepreneur? Jeff earlier this morning mentioned and hinted at, when you start off being an entrepreneur, a lot of people think you're maybe a bit crazy or off, and they question you. And I think being an entrepreneur may be a bit of a personality disorder to a large degree. I think lots of entrepreneurs tend to be troublemakers. They tend to not like authority a lot, and they tend to love their freedom. And to a large degree, me being an entrepreneur is primarily about finding balance in my life. It's about being able to give time to all the things that I love and I'm passionate about, and that includes my family. I'm fortunate enough to have some of my siblings here, as is my father's also in the audience. It's having time for my kids. It's having time for my sports. And so that's the beauty of what I do. Every day is fun. It's enjoyable, and I do what I want to do every day. And I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Jeff, what keeps you doing? Why do you keep on building company after company? What motivates you?
I have a question for you first. Why am I wearing a tie?
Yeah, why are you?
I'm wondering that now. I don't normally, but I certainly did out of respect for this morning. It's interesting because you, at every different phase, at least for my answer to that question, your life goes in phases, and at different phases of your life, different things matter to you. So there's times in your life where you actually, maybe you want to buy a new house, and money is important. So you're very focused on, I have to make money. Then there's times where you have 3 kids instead of 1. And you've got a family focus where you need to be there. Then there's times where you have career goals. So for me, I always, in relatively short, like 2 or 3 years at a time, sit down and say, out of the next couple of years, what is most important to me? What do I actually want to achieve? And then I go back and look at what I'm doing. And I, granted as an entrepreneur, I hate inefficiency. So I look at the things I'm doing and I'm saying, what was I trying to get done in the next couple of years? And am I doing something right now that leads me there? And if I'm not, I shouldn't be doing it. I either need to change the goals or change the activities. So at different points, I've had very different goals. Like I said, there were points where I actually was trying to make money. There were points where I was actually trying to do something not related to money or business. Right now, I'm not, my motivation has not been to launch companies. In fact, the company that I have now, Color Jar, is a company literally that we launched to help other people achieve their dreams. So I'm not trying to build companies. What I'm trying to do is help other people. That's what means the most to me, is when I get a letter, an email from somebody that says, you inspired me, you helped me, you educated me, or in some way helped somebody else move forward with their life. So that actually does get me up in the morning. That means a lot to me right now, not launching another company, but that just happens to be where I am at this point in my life.
So it seems from all the panelists here that you've all started, with this entrepreneurial bug when you were all kids. Do you think there is an age where it's too old to become an entrepreneur or to start a company? Does that exist, or is that a myth?
I don't think so, because you guys heard me say earlier today, if you were there, that the power of an idea, a good idea is a good idea, and it doesn't matter who thought of it. If somebody came up with a brilliant product and you said, I have to have this tomorrow, and they said, did you know that an old person created that? I would still buy the product. Okay, so the good news is a good idea is a good idea. The difference is the level of energy and commitment that it takes. As you get older, your values change. So when you're younger, you have nothing at stake. You don't have a family and kids. You're willing to travel more. At different phases, it is just easier. Let's say that. But I would never say never. At any age, you could come up with an idea and launch a company. It is no doubt easier when you have less responsibility, but it's not impossible.
I was once given the advice to start a company before I have kids, because if I fail, it's okay. I can fail fast and move on. I mean, speaking about failure, what do you think is the importance of failure here, or the type of failure that we should strive for if we're going to fail?
Sure. So, I'm actually glad you asked that, because there's been this sort of cultural thing in the United States that, this is my personal opinion, that went too far the other way, where people were saying celebrate failure, right? And they have failure parties where they laugh about their failures and everything. They in some parts of my country, they think that's cool. I don't ever set out to fail. I don't want to fail. It is not fun. It does not make me happy. However, I get over it really fast because it happens anyway. So my attitude is, we shouldn't be going out trying to create failures as some badge of honor. What we should realize is, we're not going to get everything right, and failing is fine. You do learn more from your failures, as you said, than you do from your successes, but learn fast, pay attention, get up again tomorrow, and start something different. So I'm not afraid of failure. I just don't think it's something to celebrate. Say, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm still alive, and I still got tomorrow, and I'm going to start something else.
So if you fail, try to fail fast.
I do actually like that attitude. And let me just say one thing about that. Sometimes I meet with people. Now, I mentioned that what I do now is help other people try to launch their companies and achieve their dreams. And half of what we do is nonprofit. So helping people achieve their dreams doesn't mean they're trying to get rich, right? A lot of people are trying to do something that makes the world better, and we help with that. But nonetheless, oh, I forgot. What did you originally ask me before I went off track?
Fail fast, basically.
Okay, so I think that here's what people don't do. A lot of times I'm meeting with people, and they have told their whole family, your dad's here, right? They told your siblings are here. You tell them all that you got this great idea, it's going to be the best company ever, and you're going to be able to buy everybody a house. And it doesn't work. So what happens is, I ask people, I look at their business and I say, are you kidding me? This isn't working. Stop and do something else. And they won't do it because of pride. They don't want to tell everybody that it didn't work. They don't want to tell their father that they failed at something. And so the way that I tell people to deal with that is to, at the very beginning, write down on day one, what would success look like 1 year from now and 2 years from now? What would failure look like? So when you get there, there's no discussion, right? You look at it, it's objective. I agreed that if we did not hit these accomplishments in this time, this thing was a failure and we're shutting it down, there's no discussion.
Well, what's the most common mistake that entrepreneurs take that get them to failure from your experience?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a long list there. Everything from financial management skills they don't have to not understanding the customer, putting a product out that you thought was a great idea, but the person who needs to buy it either doesn't think it's a good idea or wouldn't pay that money for it. There's a lot of mistakes to make.
So how do you hedge the financial and the product risks as an entrepreneur, as entrepreneurs in the room?
Well, I think that goes back to the importance of a team. I'm not a finance guy, so I went and got somebody way smarter than me and said, make sure I'm doing this right. I never pretend to be something I'm not or know something that I don't. The product stuff, I would tell the finance guy, you look at these numbers, I'm going to go out in the marketplace and talk to customers and make sure I'm not thinking up an idea that they don't like. So I think your team has to split up and go attack those problems.
So again, we talk about the importance of team. Roy, do you itch when you become comfortable?
Comfortable as in the company's working, the venture's working? Or?
This is my gut feeling of it. I've known you for a while, and I think whenever you become comfortable, whenever you see things are going their way on their own, you itch and you want to do something new.
Yeah, it's time to move on. For me, it's usually about solving a problem. Any idea I come up with, it's usually a problem that I've run into and I'm trying to solve. In the old days, I started before I don't know if, there are some older people here in the room, the .com. So in the .com days, we used to throw money at the problem. Now post .com and with a couple of bubbles that happened, now we rely a lot on open source. Hopefully there's nobody from Microsoft here. But we rely big time on open source, and that's how we can come up with new products, new ideas, and prototypes, put them to market, and try them out at low cost, and move on.
Your mom was an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And how did the genes transfer? I mean, do you think it's genetic or it could be taught?
My mom is actually, she started in the 70s in the telecoms in the Middle East as a woman. So that's kind of all the odds are against her. She's still an entrepreneur. She just launched her latest venture in medical equipment, I think like 5 or 6 years ago. She's in her late 70s. So definitely being an entrepreneur, she's someone I go to and I bounce ideas at, and she started from scratch and she keeps on trying. And like I said, woman, Arab world, it's tough.
Muhammad, where do you get your inspiration as role models? Where do you look at as role models?
Well, to be honest with you, you see it in different forms, in different ways of life, in terms of, people doing something to support their country, their culture, something they believe in. So even if it's a very small thing or an idea, they keep protecting or defending, and they feel that this is something very proud. I like this kind of stuff, especially with the young people that I go see in universities and I talk. They're very passionate about what they want to do in life, because when we graduated, I did not know what I wanted to be. So and that's our role, is to keep inspiring them, hopefully to have that power. So I do find personal inspiration from seeing somebody who is up and coming, who is very passionate about what they do.
What did you study in school?
General arts and animation.
And how did you decide to come back? You went to Boston, right?
I went to Boston, studied architecture, failed miserably, kicked out from the university. But when you study architecture, they teach you art as well. So I loved the art part. So I told my father that I wanted to pursue a career in general arts, and he said, I really don't care as long as you come back with a degree. And I was like, cool, done, deal. So that's back in the 1998. That back then, the Middle East had one governmental TV station, one governmental radio, and one governmental newspaper each. And so the best I could do was come and work as a presenter. And with all due respect, presenters now are really, awesome. But back then, it's not something you would go study in the States for.
And you decided to come up with Freej, and quite unusual.
Yes.
I would say back then. Were you afraid of failing?
Well, when I was, I was like 20, I was like failure, and it really does not rank, but now you worry, you're like, I'm 34, and I'm like, if I fail, I'm like, muhasab, and people like, but I'm 20, back then I was like 20, like I failed, it's no big deal. The meaning of failure is not as big and mature as it is right now. When you fail now, many things get associated with failure with you. But back then, failing is part of the process.
I would say one of the toughest parts of building a company is scaling it.
Yes.
And you've scaled your company very well. What are the things you've learned throughout the way and adapted to that to be able to get to that stage? If you want to summarize it maybe in 5 points, what would those be?
Well, I don't think I can summarize it in 5 points, but this is something I've learned. Whatever conventional structure there is to set up companies and plan your growth for the next 5 years and planning where you want to be, blah, 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 I kind of found out that this does not work for my company. I don't know why. Even hiring staff, I feel that we grow organically, because one year I'm doing Freej, the next year I don't know what I'm doing. One year I'm working with Kanye West, the next year I'm working with God, Hayat al-Fahad. So the projects really come kind of ad hoc, and some of them are really big projects in the millions and tens of millions, and some of them are like barter deals. So you really don't know what comes your way, and as such, you need to be ready as a company with a certain culture in that company to allow for it, like something to shrink, compact itself. Because when we start doing Freej, we're like 15 people, and then by the end of the final episode, we're like 500 people working on a project. And then by the time we finish airing the last episode, we scale back to 15 people again. So we need to be flexible as such.
Rabea, Mohammed just talked about the concept of being agile and fast. How do you apply that within your company? And maybe tying into this question is, how do you allow your employees or your structure to come up with ideas, random ideas that we talked about, and support them?
One of the most attractive things about working in the world of the internet is things change very, very fast. And we're continually aware of the fact that if we miss out on a theme, we might become extinct overnight. And so, as an internet company, we're now 12 years old. We always joke that we're the dinosaur of the internet in the region. We are the longest living, surviving, commercially available, independent internet business out there. And it's been 12 years of operating through a lot of changes. And I think the way we do that is we hire phenomenal people and give them a lot of room to be creative. And I try and position my job within the firm as a venture capitalist. I basically say, go out and find compelling problems to work on. Tell me what you need from me to help you power them, and let me support you getting there. So in most traditional businesses that I've seen in the region, the CEO tends to be the problem solver. In my case, that's not my job description. I am not the problem solver. The organization solves problems. I help get them the right resources when they need it in order to solve these problems. And that's worked well for us and kept us quite dynamic over the last 12 years.
Jeff, your first business ever was you came up with it to pay your bills. And you had no idea about what you were going into and the type of business you were going into. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I wanted a university education that I could not afford. And everybody around me said, then just go home, which actually made me want it more because nobody said fight for it. People said just go home. And I sort of issued myself a challenge. So I could not think, I had to come up with money in order to pay tuition for this university. And I looked around then, and one of the best ways to make money, because nobody knew how to price it, was software. Software was new, and software was a good way to make money. So I literally responded to a proposal for a software company, wrote a proposal to deliver a software system, and the amazing thing was somehow I won, which was all fine, except that I did not know how to write software, have never written software, and didn't know anything about it. So the next day, I basically went all around town and put signs up everywhere, software developers wanted, and people responded. And I got them all in a room, and I said, I have no idea what this is, but you guys do. Go do this. Negotiated rates with them all, which were way below what I bid the job on, and I had a software company the next day, and I was just managing employees. So what I realized is, as a CEO, we don't have to know, just what you said, we don't have to know how to do everything ourselves. We just have to make sure that there is an efficient team of qualified people doing all those things. And I raised, thank you to those people for clapping for that. I was able to raise the money to do that, but I did not know what I was doing. I just knew that I did know one thing to do, which is manage people.
You can start thinking about the questions you have. I'm going to ask one more question to the panel, and you can think about the question in the meantime. How easy, Jeff, was it for you to fundraise from investors the second time around, and how important were investors for you in your journey?
So it was really hard because I was 20-something years old with no track record. I remember the first conversation because at one point I was trying to raise what for 20 years old and a first company was a lot of money, $1 million, and it was years ago, $1 million then. And so I went to somebody and he said, let me understand this. You're 20 something, you've never really had a real job, you've never done anything in your life. You want me to give you $1 million and if you lose it, it's gone. And I said, yeah, pretty much that was the conversation. And what amazed me was I finally found somebody. He said, you're pretty brave to come in here and ask me for that. And he said, but you know what that reminds me of? And I said, no, sir, what? And he said, me, when I was your age, I'm going to do it.
Do we have any questions from the floor?
We have a mic.
We're getting you a mic.
Well, let me introduce. My name is Imran. And
just for house rules, your name and short questions and end with a question mark.
okay.
I.e. no comments.
What is the one thing that I need to consider for my first startup?
Maybe we can go.
Just one thing.
Maybe we can go around the panel and see each one give their own. Their
All right,
best
I'll
thing.
do a really short one. That there's a real value equation. You can make a product that somebody wants to pay money for that is more money than it takes you to make it.
I'm probably going to pass too. It's a tough question, so I'm just going to, it's too broad of a question. I'm going to pass.
I think the most important thing is to have a lot of passion in what you do. Just believe in what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
How important, Rabea, do you put on the power of strategizing, building a business plan, and thinking about what you're going to do and maybe all the case scenarios versus just going ahead and doing it?
So that's a great question. When I was starting my first business, I was 25 years old, and I went to my dad seeking financing and basically said, Dad, I've stumbled on the greatest business concept in the world. To which his immediate response was, where's the business plan? And my response was, I don't have one. So he said, go away and get your business plan done. And so I retreated, spent a couple of weeks working really hard at a business plan, and then came back to him with that business plan in order that I could try again for financing. At which point, he said, do you have the business plan? I said, yes. He said, how much money do you need? I gave him an amount. He said, here's your check. And my question was, wait, what did I just spend the last couple of weeks doing? To which his response was, the business plan is not for me. It's for you. It's for you to think about what problems you might face, for you to have a bit of a plan, and for you to be able to assess your successes and failures as you're proceeding along the way. Now, needless to say, that's a document. It's highly unlikely that it will be close to the truth, but at least it provides guidelines and shows that you've thought out a lot of the problems and the challenges that might occur sometime in the future. And I think that's the use of a business plan. It's primarily for you. I don't think any serious venture capitalist or investor really gives it too much weight, but it's important that they know that you've done that homework because you have a good idea about where you're trying to take this business.
By the way, Roy, where's the business plan? We invested in Roy and we're still waiting for the business plan. Did you have a business plan?
Yeah, I had a short business plan. My business plan extended into 1 year in the future. It's mainly, when I came to you guys, I already had a prototype up and running. I already had 2 customers and I was generating revenue. So I was looking for smart money. So to go back to that earlier question about scaling, one very good way for me to scale was to let smart money invest in my company. And they've opened a lot of doors for me, and they've helped me scale into contacting the right companies at the right level. And that was important.
Question here.
Hi, my name is Usman Khalid. Sorry, did I? Okay. I'm running a very fast growth company. My major issue is that the people I hire, sometimes they do not change that well within the year, so that I have to bring in a new layer of better people on top of them. That creates a lot of agitation. Right now, we are planning for 2013, and we have brought in 3 people at the higher level, and I foresee that if some of them do not grow during 2013, we will have to bring another layer on top of these guys in 2014. So my question is, am I doing something wrong with the hiring process, or is there a problem that you all have faced?
Who wants to take this question?
I think it's very hard to fire people, but sometimes I think you might need to let go of, C grades or B grades people. If you want A graders, they're working with you. As Jeff said, he hires always people who are probably smarter than him to be very smart in that category that they're working on. Don't put sticks in the wheels of your company. If you feel that this is not working, and add another layer of people managing people who will have to manage people to deliver a product. But it's the nature of your company. Maybe you need that hierarchy in there, but as a general rule, don't be afraid to let some people go, because by the end of the day, your company will have to go if those people were not let go.
One word of caution. There's a few different styles of leadership. There's one where you're running up the hill and you're hoping that everyone chases you up that hill. And in many cases, you might lose your team and they might fall behind. There's another sort of theory where you're sort of pushing your team up that hill, at which point everyone's being slowed down. I think there's an intermediate where you just need to make sure that you pick great people, and you're not just hiring great people, but you're focused on developing them so that they can grow with you. If you're finding that you're continually having to replace your team, you might want to consider whether or not you're giving your team enough training and development time. And that's not to say that's where you should spend all your time, but it's very difficult to grow an organization if you're continually losing people. It becomes way too expensive to replace them and to bring them up to speed. And so nurturing existing talent is very important.
Ibrahim?
Hi, my name is Ibrahim Tadros. My question is kind of going back to Amran's question, is if you got a business, you're starting a business, you have an idea, the risk is very low in terms of all you need is the time and the laptop, basically. It's your time and a laptop. That's what it takes. Do you really need to have a business plan? And the reason I'm asking that is, if I still really have no idea where it's going, is just trying to push it through, kind of to what Mohammed was saying, is you don't know where it's heading. You just want to start it and see where it goes. Do you really need a business plan? That's the first part. Second part of the question is, let's assume whatever the initial investment is, if there is one, $50,000, $20,000, $10,000, that's done. And there's no kind of running cost, very minimal running cost. How much buffer would you really need to make sure kind of you're okay?
Sure.
So the business plan is a way for you to set a goal. So if you're starting a business, you don't even before you think of the business model, the first thing is setting a goal. Why am I doing this? Where do I hope to be 5 years from now? These might be personal objectives. They might be about lifestyle. They might be financial objectives. There's a whole bunch of things that can go in there. But if you just sit at your desk and start fiddling without knowing why you're even doing that probably might not be as constructive as it should be. And so, the depth of what a business plan is, it can go everything from saying, this is my vision, my mission, my values, to putting down financials that are very explicit. But some amount of planning is necessary. And certainly if you're trying to raise money, if don't expect to be able to go out there without anything and raise money. So that's the first part of the question. I'll leave it to others to answer the second part of the question.
Just to add, we had to make a business plan to start off for 3 years. So because we had to get investors to fund the project. So if you want somebody to believe in your project, you need to show them a roadmap. You show them and be true to yourself. Don't make a feel-good business plan so you can see, look, I'm a genius. For me, for example, DVD sales for the project, merchandising for the project was at 0 for 3 years, 0. Although I knew that it might be a lucrative business, but I kept it safe. So if it fails, nobody comes to me and says, you know what, you inflated the business plan. But by the end of the first year, we sold more than 25,000 DVDs, and we had 400 lines of merchandising by year 3. But you need to be true to your business plan.
We have a different approach as Wamda. when someone comes to me with a 5-year projection, I ask them why did they waste their time on building a 5-year projection business plan, specifically because we invest in early stage. We put much higher value on execution and showing some early signs of success or of trend rather than the business plan. I think, as Rabea said, the business plan is an exercise for yourself to see where you're going and how you're going to, but you can start building a microwave, you can end with an oven. It's like PayPal story, YouTube story, also something different. Question at the end? One more? Yeah, we have time for, this is the last question.
Sure. My name is Yasha. Primarily the question is for Jeff, but then other panelists could answer it as well. The first question is basically, we talked about an idea, a business plan. One has to have the passion, and obviously the product or the service has to make money in order for it to make sense as far as the business is concerned. My question is, you said that you do nowadays help out people in terms of how should they go about putting their business together. What are the key ingredients that you actually look into, or as I want to put it, what tickles your fancy that someone puts up a pitch and you say, okay, I want to help this guy?
All right, so I'll try to answer that fast. We actually created something that we call a golden purpose. And that is what we look for. Your golden purpose is this intersection between these three things. The first one is, what are you uniquely qualified to do? If you tell me you're going to launch, if he tells me he's going to go do what you do and produce entertainment content and he's never done it before, I don't believe he can't do it, but I'll probably bet on you if you're going to do that. You have experience, you have relationships, you have the contacts. So your golden purpose is, what has your life best prepared you to succeed at? We look for that. Are the entrepreneurs doing something that logically it seems like they'll be good at doing? The second thing we look at is market positioning. Are you launching something that we believe there's a space in the world for right now? The third one is the actual market frenzy. We always call this a fan frenzy. In the end, what you wish your business had was the same fans you see at a football game. People who paint their face and wear your colors. I was in South America recently and I went outside and everyone in the whole country was wearing the football jersey of their country that day. I wish that was my Priceline jersey or some corporation. Your goal is to get customers that love you. So what we look for is, what are the chances that you are doing something you're good at with people that love what you do in a market where there's room for you to exist. When we find those three things, that's a go.
Thank you all for coming. Before we end, I want to ask the panelists to just give one tip each for the next serial entrepreneurs in the room. And then we're going to start with you, Jeff.
All right, so I'll keep mine on the market end, which is make sure you listen to the right people. The right people are not always, I shouldn't say this, the right people are not always your parents. The right people are the customers that you're asking to buy your product. Make sure they're part of your decision-making process.
So focus on the customer.
People you love and don't quit.
You definitely have to keep on trying. Failure is not, even if you fail, you can call it you pivot, right? We call it now you pivot, you change. But keep on fine-tuning your idea and keep at it. Don't stop.
I think you have to be ready to take a bold step. So many people kind of borderline from an idea to an entrepreneur. And in the end, if you're starting a company, make sure that you have a great culture created in your company.
You've heard it, folks, so go ahead and start building the next Facebooks of the Middle East. Thank you all for coming.